Let's talk about price and quantity and revenue. Now, price is labeled with a lowercase p, quantity a lowercase x, and revenue a capital R. Price is actually not going to be the same thing as cost. We'll clarify that a little bit later. But for now, let's just talk about price. Okay, so we're just going to focus on price for a second. And to do so, just as a warm up thing, let's say that you go into a store, right, and then you see there's a mug, and that mug, let's say, has a price tag on it, right? There's a little sticker on it, not on this mug, right? But there's a sticker on this mug that says $5. Okay, so $5 is the price of the mug, and then let's say there's a bowl. Let me get out of the way this thing. There we go. Right, a bowl, and let's say that the price of the bowl is $3. Maybe the bowl is like less fancy, it doesn't have a handle, so it's a little cheaper. Okay, so if the price of the mug is $5 and the price of the bowl is $3, how much does a buyer buy in order to get both a mug and a bowl? Think about that. And then let me phrase a slightly different question. If the price of a mug is $5 and the price of a bowl is $3, how much does a seller receive to sell both a mug and a bowl? Now, it should be the same answer in both cases, but it's just a question of perspective. And I think that matters, right? Sometimes you're the consumer, sometimes you're the one buying things, sometimes you're the seller. As a seller, you're the one in business doing things. But both should be the same, right? Like the same amount of money is transferred. It's does the buyer give up the money to get the product, or is it the seller who gets the money and then gives up the product? Now, talking about both bowls and mugs might be reality, but it just complicates things. So just to focus on one thing at a time, let's just talk about mugs alone, right? So let's say mugs. We'll deal with mugs, and again, we're using little p for the price, okay, and then little x for the quantity. Now, let's just go ahead and to make things work easy for right now, we're just going to say that the price is known to be $5. Little p is equal to 5. We'll complicate things in just a moment, but we'll stick with that. So let's say the price of each mug is $5, and x is the quantity, and let's say you know that x is 10. So if the price of each mug, there's a $5 sticker on each mug, and 10 mugs were going to be purchased or 10 mugs were going to be sold. It depends on which person you are in the transaction. Then how much money total is received by the seller? And I think you'll come up with a number, but if you're like, let's just make sure, you want to make it a little more down to earth, why don't we do the following? Why don't we forget the 10 mug situation and let's just say price of one mug, right? $5. And so that's got to trade hands, but let's just do this. Price of one mug, $5. Price of a second mug, also $5, but this is an additional $5, right? Price of a third mug here. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Another $5. Right? So it's like right now, the way this is set up is the seller has 3 mugs, the buyer has some money, and then these things trade places. Bam, right? So if that happens, right? So the question that's being posed right now is if p is equal to 5, let's in fact modify what's written here a little bit. If p is equal to 5, and little x, that's the quantity, or the number of items generally, or to be specific to this problem, we can say x is the number of mugs. If x is 3, what is the money received? That is the revenue. What is the revenue? Right? What happens when 3 mugs are sold at $5 a piece? How much money is received? Now, what if somebody said that the amount of money received was $8? What would you say to that? Now, we've already written that R is the revenue, but what we'll generally do is say that capital R is revenue, but we'll tend to be a little more specific and write capital R of X. Okay, we'll write that to mean this is the revenue or the money received, that's what revenue means, for selling X items. And we'll see examples of such formulas later, right? The real question I want you to think about, and you go back to the 5 for p and 3 for x example, or go back to the 5 for p and 10 for x example, and think about how can you compute the revenue based on the price, little p, and the quantity x. Can you make a formula? Now, the next thing we're going to do is we've just dealt with the prices being $5, but that's not all that realistic to know what the price is right off the bat. Not necessarily anyway, because sometimes this information is driven by the market. So what we're going to do is we'll change things a little bit and say, what if, again, we're sticking with, maybe I'll just keep this paper here. We're sticking with P as price, okay? Sticking with P as price, sticking with X as quantity. But let's just say that now we happen to know, instead of price being 5, let's just say that there's a formula. This is a market-driven thing. So little p is equal to 402 minus 3x. What we're saying here, and this happens, this is what's called price demand, is that there's this equation that says that the price, little p, is related to the value of x. So for example, if x is equal to 10, then, and you can just compute it, plug in 10 for x, you should end up with p is equal to 372. So what this is saying is that if there are 10, is this dollars? This is not. This is quantity. So this is number of items, number of mugs. If there are 10 mugs, then the price of each mug is $372. Kind of a pricey mug. It's not something that probably most people are going to spend money on then, right? If x is instead equal to 100, then the price of each individual mug is $102. Still kind of pricey, probably not the kind of thing that people are going to spend money on. And if, let's get the number to be maybe a little more realistic, if x is equal to 132, you can go ahead and plug that in, compute, simplify. You'll see that then p is equal to 6. So let's talk about what this means, and let's now see these numbers as a little more realistic. It's not that 10 and 100 are unrealistic. It's just that maybe the price of an individual mug being $372 is unrealistic. It might be realistic for some people, right? But let's just say $6 for a mug. Okay, that's more reasonable. Now, what about this x equals 132? Is that reasonable? If you're a single buyer, like you are one person trying to just get some mugs for your house, this is unreasonable, right? But that's not what this number here represents. This number is actually maybe quite low. This is actually for the company that's selling mugs, or making them in the first place to sell them, to make 132 mugs. Now that's actually not a lot, right? If you're going to be in the mug making business, it makes more sense that X is going to be 1,000, 10,000, right? You're going to make a lot of mugs. But let's just go with it, right? The numbers are a little small because the numbers here are actually rather small. But I hope, let's just go with this and run with this, that if X is 132, if there are 132 mugs in the market, then the price of each mug should be $6. So what I want you to think about is, if you went ahead and took this equation and you plugged in 0 for x, you're going to get little p is equal to 402. What does that mean? So in a single sentence, put the numbers 0 and 402 all together, and be sure to think in terms of units, right? Put the units on each of the numbers, on both the 0 and 402, and talk about what that means. On the other hand, if you were to plug in 0 here where the p is, and you solve for x, you're going to get x is 134. So what does that mean? Can you make a sentence that includes the number 0 and the number 134, put the appropriate unit on each of those numbers, and make a sentence that talks about what this means? Now, both of these are kind of extreme cases for there to be 0 of something, but talk about what this means, and just run with the analogy. On some level, the model breaks down a little bit on these edges when you get towards one of the variables equaling 0. But just talk about what that means. Just theoretically, it should be this. And that it's a theoretical case that does not show up, but it's important to put that all together so that we really understand what the variables mean because of the manipulations we're going to do with them next.